given the situation, bro, like, I don't even know if I would have been able to do the things that she did. I don't know if I'm 1,000%, like, I'd be like, hey, like, I'm fully healed from that. Like,
why is it that when the father comes back home after leaving, he doesn't get that same greeting?
you're not making it easy on yourself by leaving your kid.
Like, she's looking at this as a real biological father who was there for you.
What am I doing here? My father's servants literally live better than this.
Welcome to another episode of the Damn Good Dad podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, another one of my close friends, brothers, a fellow entrepreneur, colleague, coworker, you name it. Again, arguably one of the greatest friends a man could have. Yeah, Grantley Adams, guys. Welcome.
Dang, what's popping?
What's
I'm
good,
glad
man?
to be here, dog. Like, I'm happy that this is a thing.
This is a thing?
Yeah, like, that this podcast exists, that, like, you've put the time and effort into actually, like, executing on it.
Yeah.
Because I definitely think that it's something that we've been talking about and that's been on your heart for a while. But it's good to see, like, the process of you actually executing. Like, hey, we're doing that thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing that thing.
Thank you, man.
I think I'm proud. I know God's proud. Like, I think it's necessary, dog.
It's crazy because, like, I think, and honestly, it's kind of right in line with fatherhood because this is subject matter, right? A lot of times I feel like I have these great ideas and we don't execute or whatever the case may be. And then I'm like, I'm almost like defeated because I feel like, dang, like, here's another great idea that we didn't execute on. This was different, though, because it was like, you know me and you know my heart for people, my compassion for people as a whole. But fatherhood is so near and dear to me because I know the struggles. So even if this whole podcast, and I know it's not going to be, but even if this whole podcast was a complete flop, in my mind, I'm like, I've already won. Like, it's already doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
We've interviewed a number of people already. I, at this point, honestly, I don't care if we don't get the viewership or the likes or the follows. Like, none of that stuff really matters to me because I know that this is more about breaking chains, like squashing generational curses, being better for our kids. And ultimately, that's the biggest win that we can get from this. So yeah. I'm just pleased enough that, like you said, we're actually executing. We set out a plan and we're doing.
Yeah. No, I could agree with that. I think, like, part of me, and you already know how I feel about this, and we don't gotta, like, belabor this specific topic, but I think that there is a blessing that comes when you're on assignment, and part of me also feels like this is a part of assignment.
Yeah.
And almost like seek first the kingdom of God and everything else will be added.
Yeah.
Like, if you're on, like, kingdom assignment with this, then everything else that you're saying, like, hey, it doesn't even matter, is also, like, honestly, like, the best, like, mindset to have, but will come along with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, bro, I'm excited to see like what this actually does.
You?
Yeah.
Dude, like, you know, the crazy thing is, and if I can be honest, right?
Yeah,
we first started, when the idea first came up, what, a year ago, maybe longer, the thought was, this is going to be an avenue, a means to an end almost. Like, it's going to be something that will generate views. It'll generate exposure. It'll generate, income. Let's just be honest, right? And that was the mindset right up until the first episode got shot.
Was that the Pat episode?
Yeah. So,
dude, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, you're bro. Like, the first 5 minutes of me watching the Pat episode, I was like, no, this, like, the impact that this thing has, like, the potential impact that this thing can have is, like, way bigger than I would have ever, like, placed on it.
Same.
Like, and Pat's story is amazing, period, bro. Like, so for people to be able to hear that, like, and I didn't even watch all of it. I just watched, like, the first 5 minutes. Like, in 5 minutes, I was like, oh no, this is kingdom impact. Like, this needs to exist.
1,000%. And that's what the surprising part for me was, because, again, mindset means to an end all the way up until that first episode.
Yeah.
Shot that first episode and I was like, all right, cool. Like, like, I've known Pat forever. Yeah. And to see him pour out in the way that he did and speak the way that he did, it was different. And I was like, okay, I noticed something there. Yeah. Then we recorded the second episode with Drew. And when that was done, I walked away from that conversation thinking to myself, yo, I've got tools that I'm going to take home from me and my kids and how I'm operating in fatherhood at home with my kids from that episode. Yeah. And it was that moment that I realized, one, we're onto something, right? And forget about, again, it's not about, like, building this big empire. I don't care about that part. we're onto something in the sense of like, if I got what I got from those 2 episodes,
imagine how many other people was going to get something like amazing from
right.
that, bro.
And my mindset is like, you know, I may be here or wherever the case may be in the scale or the journey of being a dad or whatever. I might be here. Somebody might be down here.
Yeah.
But there's so much they're gonna get from these episodes, man.
Yeah.
And like just having open dialogue, like this is literally the heart of all this. So after those 2 episodes, you know, were shot, then I went back and I started thinking to myself, this is bigger than this. This is a necessity.
Yeah, it's that for sure.
Yeah. So and that's when I went and shot like the intro video that I've been working on. Trying to like, because so many people kept asking me, what's the podcast about? What the podcast is about? And I got tired of explaining it. So then when I started shooting that video, it was clear to me in that moment what this was for and the purpose that it's gonna serve.
Yeah.
And it's much bigger and much like grander than just like, hey, Alex has a cool podcast or whatever. Like I'm so excited about like hearing testimonials.
Yeah.
Beyond the social media crap, beyond like all that. I want people to send emails and be like, yo, you might have saved, you know, I don't even care about saving. Like I just want to hear someone give me some good news about like, yo, your podcast gave me this nugget. And because of that, I'm a better father today because of it. Yeah. Like
that's good.
That's all like, that's like the greatest gift I can get from this podcast. And that's my heart, man.
Yeah. No, that's good, bro. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm stoked.
All right, bro. Look, let's get into it. I always start with asking this main question first. It's really to give people context about who you are and kind of your background and where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your relationship with your dad, where you're coming from.
Yeah.
What that relationship is like today versus how it was back in the day.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the meat and potatoes, man.
Yeah, bro. So, currently my father isn't necessarily like he's not in my life per se. Like I know where he is. I know that like I can get in contact with him if I needed to. He left my family when I was about like 7 or 8. And also kind of like left with a bunch of just things going on like at the time. There were like people in our lives, like aunts, uncles, that had advised against him leaving, and him leaving actually, like, if on paper I want to say I can't fault him if everything that I know is accurate, but then there's also like other information that I didn't get until I was like older, like that's kind of like opposing stories, like it's just weird. But yeah, he wasn't in my life like for a while. My sister, when he left, was about like 3 or 2. So she grew up even without really having any type of solidified relationship with her father. So single mom, we were immigrants, like, so living in America without any type of documentation, like illegally, like fresh out of Jamaica. Not fresh. We were there for probably about 5 years before we left. But like had to navigate that. Like that brought a whole nother complexity to like my young life. Like there were things that should have gone through. And when he left, it was around the time that things should have gone through. So after he left, 1, he couldn't get back into America. And 2, it ended up affecting us to where like we didn't get documented. My mom probably just like got her stuff situated a couple years ago, maybe 4 years ago.
And at this point, she's been here.
Yeah, she's been here.
Years?
Yeah, like I'm 33 now. No, 34. She had a birthday last month. Yeah, so I'm 34. We were here since I was 2, so let's say 32 years. Probably took 30 years. Where something is like it's almost like the children of Israel leaving like Egypt and going to the promised land. Like, hey, something that should have taken like this amount of time ended up taking like 40 years. Like something that probably would have taken just the 5 years that they were here, ended up taking 30 years because of a decision that was made. And that impacted the way that I think through decisions. It impacted my like almost like having like a fear of making bad choices, because at a young age I realized it was probably like middle school or maybe late elementary school. I realized, hey, like one person's decision can either positively or negatively not only impact them, but the other people that are around them that are close to them.
Yeah.
And the trajectory of that was very like interesting. So that made me more cautious of decision making. um made me take things slower, which in some instances were a benefit, but in other instances were not all that great because I started second guessing like decisions.
Yeah.
And you get like paralysis by analysis. To where it's like, hey, you're not making a choice whatsoever on this thing because you're afraid. But yeah, bro. As far as like our relationship now, like we don't talk frequently. And by frequently, like maybe once every couple of years.
I really thought you were going to say months.
Heck nah.
So you talk to your dad now once every year or so?
I mean, so there was like a whole like span of time, like a very, very long span of time. Let's say from like immediately after he left, like it'd probably be like phone calls like regularly, right? Like phone calls on birthdays for sure. Maybe up until let's say all of elementary school, it was frequent. Probably like middle school was less frequent. By like high school time, like it was like non-existent. And from like maybe high school all the way up until maybe like 29, 30-ish, 31, like around there, like I had like this crazy like God encounter. And one of the things that I felt like I needed to do was like get in contact with my dad. And I spoke to him twice since that encounter. And that was probably like around 31. So maybe once in 2 years. And when I say spoke to him, like there'll be times when he'll like send like messages on like WhatsApp. And part of it is like on me, like where I think in Pat's thing, he's like, bro, like you should make a better effort even after like after the first initial reach out, because it's almost like he got abandoned twice.
Yeah.
For me, it was like, hey, I don't know if I'm 1,000% ready to reestablish this relationship in the form that I think a father-son relationship should be reestablished, for multiple reasons. Like it doesn't take a lot for me to realize that this could be either beneficial or harmful. And there were things that I was like, this might be less beneficial than it needs to be.
Or than it's worth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And multiple like people, I guess that's subjective, right? Like that's subjective. Because some people might be like, bro, like, yeah, like this is good for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. Like you should definitely like reestablish that like relationship or make sure that you do it. But I don't know if I was like I'm 1,000% at 34, 1,000% ready to like have it be built on what it could possibly be built on now, because I think it's weird. Like I'm processing this now as I'm speaking because I've never had to like process this before. Maybe it's a defense mechanism to not be abandoned a second time.
Interesting.
Potentially.
Okay. I could see that.
Potentially. Or disappointed. Not so much abandoned. Not in the sense of like, yo, it's abandonment, but like just like this, like, yo.
You don't want to be let down again.
Yeah. For multiple reasons. No offense to him, like he did what he did, and navigated life the way that he navigated. But I also like peep characteristics too. And I do see like in certain aspects, not to say that this is like bad or anything, but like he's slightly like manipulative in certain parts. And this is coming from somebody that doesn't really know him like all that deep.
Yeah.
But in the little bit that I do, I'm like, okay, I can see this. I can see that. And it might be conscious or subconscious, but I'm like, like, I don't know.
So I do want to tell you that in this short amount of time that you've been talking, I've come up with a title for this episode. I'll tell you later though, as we progress through this. So here's my thing, right? I'm thinking through what high school was like for you. And I think the thing that stuck out the most in all that you said just now
Sure.
was how communication with him tapered off as you got older.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, that's crazy because one, obviously a child needs you at every stage of life, right? But my personal opinion, a child needs you even more once you hit like that tween going into teenage age or teenage years.
Yeah.
Because you're going through puberty. You're trying to figure out relationships now. You're trying to like manage like school stuff. There's a lot that happens and a lot of changes that happen in that time period from like 12 to like 18, right?
Yeah.
That 6-year gap.
Yeah.
There's a lot that can transpire, especially in middle school, man. You're just trying to find yourself. So I feel like that's one of the most crucial times, in my opinion, that a parent, but specifically a father, is really necessary to help their child navigate through that. So I guess my question for you is like, how did you navigate high school or even middle school, like that awkward stage of just coming into
Yeah.
your own and like not having anyone to direct you and say, hey, you know what, Grant, Matt, whatever, like this is XYZ. When you come across this is how you operate. Like,
yeah. No, that's a good question, bro. That's a good question. I think during those times, my mom was like really looking for good father figures, to like instill into my life. And I remember just like there were seasons of life where she like was just really frustrated with like the people at her church, or like the men that's there because she almost wanted them to like like, hey, like, can you help my son?
yeah,
Like be like that for my son. Help him navigate these things because I can't do it. Like, whatever. And looking back at it as an older person, I'm like, bro, that's not their responsibility. Like, you can't, like, don't be as upset as you are
sure,
about the situation. Because that's not their kid. And they've got lives and things that they're trying to like do. How did I think that my middle school and high school years weren't normal because of, and what is normal? They were a little bit different than like my peers because of the situation that we were in as like undocumented people in America, right? So in middle school, we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment with like 5 people in that thing. Like it would be the person that owned the apartment in her room with her daughter, in like the 1-bedroom. There was another lady that was there that would sleep on the floor in the closet. And me, my sister, and my mom that would sleep on a mattress. I almost want to say it was like a twin. It wasn't a queen for sure. Probably what's one under a queen? Twin?
I'm pretty sure,
Okay.
or a full or something like that.
Maybe a full. But one of those mattresses in the living room of that apartment. It wasn't big enough for all 3 of us to fit on the mattress. So there were times when my mom would sleep on the floor. And there were times when I'd just give my mom the mattress, and there were like times when I would just like sleep on the floor. And that was middle school. Like leaving out of there, my mom would always kind of like pray for us before we left like the house. And she really instilled like, hey, like, because she's a Bible believing, faith believing like woman. She'd really instilled like heavily, and I commend my mom like till this day for this. That like, hey, like God is a father to the fatherless, he's a mother to the motherless. Like, hey, like God is like literally your father. And I think having that relationship with God and having the dynamic of my relationship with God be a father-son relationship,
yeah,
really helped out. Whereas some people would be like, yo, like because you don't have a dad in your life, like a lot of times it's hard for you to like relate to God as father. I never could understand that sentiment because that was not my reality.
yeah.
I did not have a dad in my life, and God was the main thing that I related to as father. Which ended up like it didn't cause issues, but like caused like other things later down the line. But I think that's how I kind of like made it through. I didn't get like the on earth like dad training and like, hey, this is what it is. And I probably needed it even more so because of the situation. Like imagine being in middle school, like, and you know, you're living like in that style of situation. Like, hey, like I can't, like I'm coming home to like sleeping on the floor. And not to say that other people haven't gone through it. And I think that we're 1,000% blessed even in the situation that we're in. But it was different than like the people that I was around. It was definitely different than like a lot of my friends. And then high school was more of the same. By high school time, like we moved out of that place. And my mom got like her own apartment, and we had our own rooms, which was amazing. Like, for a bit, like my sister and I. But now you're like older, like you start now. Yeah, you're starting to realize, okay, like this is our situation for sure. It also means more things. It doesn't just mean that like when your mom's patient passes away that it takes a while for her to get a job.
Yeah.
It doesn't just mean like that like your mom has to take the bus to places because she doesn't have like a valid license to be able to drive. Now it also means like while your friends are getting like part-time jobs and saving up for cars and getting like their learner's permit, like now it's real for you. Like you're at that age where it's like, okay, like if I get a job, it has to be something under the table, or I gotta hustle. Like I gotta figure out ways to like make some bread. And I got that from middle school, bro. Like I was selling candy in middle school.
Who wasn't?
I mean, I know a lot of kids. The people that was buying the candy wasn't selling it.
That's a fact. Well, there's always got to be a supplier.
That's a fact. Dude, I remember high school. I was like, dang, bro. Like everybody, like when I went to ATC, like when we were there, I started to realize like business etiquette, bro. I started realizing, hey, your candy supply is no longer necessary because they have pizza, they have vending machines, like all the things that weren't in middle school is like now in high school. So I literally got my sister. Like, I guess this is the first time, bro. Really?
So you have like people in the streets working for you, like your sister? That's crazy,
bro. Literally had to get myself an employee, bro, and I'd pay her a piece of candy or 2 pieces of candy at the end of the day.
Piece of candy,
bro. Big facts. And Stephanie would go to like Stephanie would go to middle school, bro, and she would sell that John for me.
That's funny.
She would move.
You know, I thought you were gonna go with it. Like, in high school, now we're elevated. We're not like selling candy. Now we're selling like homework.
Nah, well, yeah, that was a thing. That wasn't me though.
I know who.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it, but
he's doing good stuff out here.
He knows who he is. He went to Harvard, man. But yeah, man. Like, so going back to you sleeping on the floor and in the mattress and all that in the living room.
Yeah,
you having a Heavenly Father to kind of fill that gap. Awesome. Like that's like the best case scenario, right? How do you think things would have been different had your dad been in the picture during that time? Now, and the obvious one we can get out the way is just a second income, right? To be able to help out financially and change the situation. But let's just say all things remain the same. All things held true. What would have been different for you mentally or emotionally having your father in that same exact situation? Do you think?
If you would have asked younger Matt this, like, and by younger, like even like maybe 5 years ago, I probably would have answered different than I answer now. Yeah. Like 5 years ago, it would have probably been like, if all things needed to remain the same. So let's say like documentation situation was still the same.
All of that, still sleeping in the living room.
Still sleeping in the living room.
Yep.
I think maybe self-confidence would probably go up. I think, to be honest, I don't know. I don't know what else would have changed. I might have been a different like person overall.
For the good or the bad.
I don't know.
And see, I asked that question because and we've had conversations about this. I do feel that as much as it sucks to have gone through what a lot of us have gone through, whatever. Yeah. At the same time,
I'm almost like,
you wouldn't be who you are today.
I know.
Without that struggle.
That's why it's hard to answer. Because like Matt at this season, post like what happened to me like spiritually, I'm like, oh, the picture has been painted. Like I can see how everything ebbed and flowed the way that it flowed.
Yeah.
For me to currently be here, like it was almost not that it was required, but like I can look back and be like, okay, I kind of almost get it. Like, and I'm not mad at it because leaning on God the way that I did, and even the fallout that I had with God and then the reconnection that I have with God currently, like with a dad in the picture, I don't know if it would have looked like that. And I think maybe it needed to look like that for whatever the purpose looks like just in general that I like God is like calling me, us, the people in my circle towards. Like I'm not mad at it. I think that I have a one up in comparison to like certain people because I had to struggle more.
Yeah.
And I see that now as a benefit, even a little bit before now. But I've kind of seen that as a benefit where it's like, oh, like you're not willing to do what I'm willing to do to get to what's necessary.
Yeah.
Because you never had to like really work hard for stuff or work that hard for stuff. Like, rejection is like hits you harder. Where for me, like, not that rejection doesn't hit hard, but if I think that this is where I'm supposed to be, then it's almost like, all right, we're pushing forward regardless.
Yeah.
Like being in a tough situation is I'm not like I'm privy to tough situations. Be that financial tough situations, be that uncomfortability, be that trying to figure things out or thinking outside of the box. For like, hey, how do I make this thing work? Like, why isn't this thing working? Like, I'm willing to not stop at it didn't work. I'll like cry about it in the moment that it doesn't work, but then it's like, okay, how do we fix this?
How do we fix it right?
Like, how do we make this better? Like, how do we move forward? Like, how, like, if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, then what do I need to do to make sure that it's accomplished? And not to say that like people that have fathers don't have that. Like,
no, it's not that.
Yeah, but I think for me specifically, like
Right.
those are like attributes that I've seen in myself that might attribute to the way that I had to maneuver how I was raised.
Okay, so that leads me into my next part now, right?
Yeah.
You have a very interesting hat on right now. First of all, it's a very nice hat. You know,
not the interesting hat.
It's also funny too because the side of it says,
"If you know,
if you know, you know."
I didn't know what that meant. Somebody was like,
"Ah, dang, come on, bro." Yeah, so it's like, if you know, you know, right? And clearly you don't know, but that's fine. But you know, for those who don't know, at the time of this recording, my man Grant here is actually expecting his first child.
My first child,
whoop,
bro.
Whoop, congrats. We at this point in time, I don't know if they know, but the rest of the public does not know if it's a boy or girl. I've already deemed it to be a boy. I already know.
I'm done.
But you know, whatever. We don't have to talk about that. But like, so the interesting thing for me now, right? And the title of this episode, going back to that, is fathering and forgiveness. And my question for you is like, you have a child on the way now.
Yeah.
That changes everything. We know that.
Yeah.
You of all people know that.
Big fact.
You know, I want to go back a little bit because obviously, you know, you're about to be a dad and there's a lot that happens between now and the time that this child arrives. My thought process is this, right? You've gone through a lot with your dad. Are you in a place of being able to say, hey, look, things are mended. Like you've forgiven him 100%. You're not harboring anything. You're not holding on to anything. And you know, in relation to you having a child, because at the end of the day, I feel that like we as human beings, especially as dads, we have to heal from that in order to not pass that down as well, or not let it to come out in how we treat and how we raise our kids. So how do you feel about going into this next stage of your life and starting parenthood, fatherhood, given your circumstances with your dad and situation?
Yeah. I guess there's like two folds to that. Have I healed? Like, I don't know if I'm 1,000%. Like, I'd be like, hey, like I'm fully healed from that. Like, I think full, like complete, like, hey, like everything is a great situation is like me, like, and my dad being like tight. And that's like, hey, this is minimal scarring, right? Are there scars? Yes. Is it healed? Like, I think it's, hey, like, you can still see that there's like a cut there and it's a pretty big gash, healed over the best that it can be healed over, to protect like itself.
Yeah.
And he's not gonna like pick at it to make it worse. But it's not problematic. It's not like hurting or damaging.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
that's kind of crazy because then the thought is that the reminder is always there.
Yes, the reminder is definitely always there. And to be honest, I think the reminder is also kind of helpful, right?
Okay.
Because it's like, hey,
remember.
Yeah. Like, I'm thinking about Avatar: The Last Airbender and Zuko.
Okay.
And the scar that he has on his face.
From his father.
From his dad.
From his dad at that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that scar was a reminder to Zuko, like, I'm not accepted here, and I need to get my dad's approval by finding the Avatar, right? And I think that scar ended up turning into, like, this was not a good situation. And this is a reminder of maybe where, like, how my father ended up becoming, like, something that I don't want to become. On two fronts, right? On two different, like, story, like, arcs with him. Like, you can see, like, hey, this is a reminder of, like, what I need to do. And then it becoming, hey, this is a reminder of who I should not be.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that the scar for me internally is a reminder of, like, hey, bro, you can, and I vehemently, bro, like, I very, very adamantly, like, have this thought process, and I've had it since I was young. Like, you do not have to be what your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, like, ended up becoming. You don't have to be what your uncle has become. You don't have to be, like, what his father has become. Like, literally, like, for me, it's like, hey, there's this generational curse of, like, just, like, male figures not in the household.
Yeah.
Down my lineage. Like, down my family tree. And being somebody that thinks a lot and, like, processes things a lot, I've been like, hey, like, I cannot do that. And what can I do to ensure that I don't do that?
Yeah.
And how can I take nuggets and have conversations with people that I'm fine with having conversations with within my family to see what happened and how to not do that. And then also seeing how they've decided to cope with their decisions, and make sense of it and also justify it. And me being able to zoom out, being like, hey, bro, like, I'm not going to tell you this, but you're really deceiving yourself in this. How do I ensure that does not happen to me?
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things that I've learned with my inquisitive mind in having that as a drive, and having that scar, because a lot of them were scarred, bro. Like, a lot of them have the scar. They still have the scar. Like, they still have daddy issues. Like, their kids can see that they have daddy issues.
Even in their old age. And I
think
that's so scary, dude.
It is scary, bro. It's very scary. It's very scary. And it's scary because it's like, dang, that kind of sucks and you never dealt with it. But then it's also scary in the sense of, like, dang, I really don't want that to be me. Because there was times when they said the same things that I'm saying. Like, hey, I don't want that to be me.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, okay, Matt, what makes you any different? So now I have to really start doing the math to find out, like, down this, like, equation, where is the mess up that spits out this result? And there's a couple of similarities that I've seen. One really being, and it's really biblical too, bro. Like they just left their family for whatever reason, like, justifiable or not. Looks good in their eyes or not. Makes sense on paper or not.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you left your family. You moved to a whole other place where your family could not go. Was not willing to go, whatever. Did not go. Let's say that. And now there's a woman raising your children without you in the household. Without you and that woman having a good connection. Without you being able to show, like, that family what it should look like. And I see it, like, just across the board within my family, bro. Like, this has damaged those people. This has damaged those children. This has damaged that relationship. This has damaged this thing. And it gives this output. And without, God, thank you for it. Like, without being able to zoom out and, like, think it through, like, you're not going to think about what needs to happen. So in my relationship with my wife, God willing, like, because I know, like, there are things that can happen and I'm not, like, beating up on them. And I'm also not oblivious to the fact that it could potentially happen to me. I just haven't lived it. I'm not going to tell you, oh, it'll definitely never do whatever. What I'm saying is, as Matthew stands right now at 34 with a child on the way, And as Matthew stood at 24 with this knowledge in his head, and at 12 with this knowledge in his head, like one of the things I'm like, hey, I don't want to do and make sure that I don't do is I don't want to leave my wife. I don't want to leave my kids. And that sounds weird. Because I know people that are also believers that also are in tough situations that that's like, hey, I need to leave this situation. Or, hey, it makes sense. Or we fell out, whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, this thing is worth a fight for me personally. And that doesn't negate everybody else's situation, like whether you're in divorce or not, whatever the case may be. Like, I'm not trying to say like, hey, you're judged because of that, like, or that you're not going to raise your kids well because of that. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying for me right now, as I stand, I need to be very wary of that. Like, a person that's addicted to alcohol, that has like a lineage of people that are addicted to alcohol, probably shouldn't be like always at the bar.
Right.
Like,
right.
Not to say that you can't take a drink or two, but if you know that that's a problem, and that's been a problem for your dad and your dad's dad and your dad's dad. Like, I was at therapy, and one of the questions they ask is there any like drug usage around like your parents? Like, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting because you're thinking that it would get passed down. That's why you're asking that question.
For sure.
Like,
trying to find patterns.
Right, exactly. So I'm like, all right, bet. Like, this is a pattern, and I've seen this pattern within my lineage. Let me make sure that I try the hardest to not do that. And if God forbid that it does happen, which I feel like I'm blessed with an amazing wife, and me and Chantel are like,
she's okay.
She great, bro. Like, I F her so much.
I'm playing. Bro.
I know.
I know she watched.
We have that relationship. If God forbid anything were to happen, the fail-safe has to be you're not leaving that city. Like, you're not leaving that space. Like, you need to be able to get to your kids like easily.
Yeah, for sure.
Easily, like, where it's not a thing where you can't be a part of their lives. Like, easily, and I don't care what it is. Like, if you need to like make it work, make your relationship work, like make you and Chantel work, like fight for that. Like, yo, if it's rough, like, nah, bro, we're gonna figure this thing out. Like, if I gotta go to counseling, we go to counseling. If we gotta navigate stuff, we gotta navigate stuff. Like, whatever it is to make sure that you guys are good. Like, make sure that you and Telly are good. And we're good. There's nothing like there now. And not that has ever been. And even in the times that we like things were bad, like, it was like, yo, I'm coming to the forefront. I will tell you this. Like, because I don't want that to be a thing. And we'll go through the roughness of me being honest with you in this, so that we can get out of it on the other end. Because I value our relationship more than anything else.
And it's not just because, hear me, I understand like your passion, obviously it's your wife, right? This is someone that you've made a commitment to, your vows to, and you take that very seriously.
Right.
But I think hearing you speak is also, on top of that, me taking this relationship seriously is also setting the stage and the foundation for what's
the next
for the child, for the child to come.
1,000%.
And like, so even going back to the whole forgiveness thing, right? I had a therapy session recently, and I think I briefly told you about this too. He was talking about forgiveness, specifically for like me and my dad, right? And he pointed out the fact that like the anger or the hurt that I feel at this very moment, at this stage of my life, is aimed at a man who no longer exists.
Yeah.
You know? So like, I'm thinking about you immediately. It's crazy because after the session was done, or not even, like as soon as he was done saying that analogy to me or whatever the case may be, that point, I thought about you instantly. And I'm like, all right, well, I know his relationship with his dad. I know how that played out, and I know where he's at. I understand. I know what your values are, and I know why they're important to you.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, like, dang, like what you're going through with your dad currently, like, and I don't know if you're angry still. I don't think you are. I feel like you're at a point where now you're like, you've accepted the reality. You've accepted the past. This is what has happened. And it no longer affects your future.
Right.
I feel like that's where you're at. But then I was thinking to myself, like, yo, like, does Grantley look at the situation with his dad and he's like, hey, what I felt for you is, you know, for the guy back then. And now I'm looking at you like, okay, cool. This is what it is. Where do we go from here, type of thing? And I say that because when the therapy session was over, I had a glimmer of hope. It was literally on some like, my relationship with my dad isn't where I want it to be. and because of the past and, you know, all that's happened and transpired and blase, blase. But then I thought to myself, dang, maybe I've been looking at this wrong. Maybe I've been so hell-bent and focused on the hurt and the pain that I've been feeling from the past that I can't even find the way forward.
Yeah.
Because I'm so like, I'm stuck. I'm still that same 5-year-old kid who didn't have as much time with his dad as he wanted to, didn't get to learn how to ride a bike or play sports with his dad, whatever. Like at 33, I'm still that 5-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment in therapy I realized, like,
yeah, I could build something new.
I can build something new.
Yeah.
It may not look like what I want it to be, but there's a future. There's a way forward. And he got real with me, man. He was like, look, that boy, that 5-year-old boy who needs his dad, you're no longer that boy.
Yeah.
And he was kind of harsh. He was like, look, you will never have that father.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, like that's a reality that I've never really considered. I'm so stuck on like, hey man, you did this and you didn't do this and blase, blase. I never thought to myself like, yo, that was like 25 plus years ago.
Yeah.
What happens now? Are we going to continue holding on to this grief and this pain?
Yeah.
And what made it worse was seeing his relationship with my kids now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you son of a, like,
you're great.
Like you made me mad. It made me upset all over again because he is to my kids what I needed him to be for me. And that made me like re-mad or re-hot all over again. But after this therapy session, it gave me perspective. And I really started thinking about like, man, you know what? I have to let go of the past. I have to let go of what was and start thinking about what can be. And you know Alicia's story, you know, for those who don't know my wife, you know, and we'll get her on an episode of some time to tell her story. Dope. But you know, and she gave me perspective every time. Like we have conversations about my relationship with my dad. She always gives me perspective. Like, yo, you know what I'm saying? And I won't spoil that. We'll save that for another time. But all that to say, like, where are you at now with your dad? Like, what do you? And again, answering this, thinking about your son, or or your child, whatever, you know, your child that's on the way. Like, what do you think about your relationship with him going forward, and how does that affect your child that's coming now?
Yeah, I think so. One of the fail safes that I said is like, hey, we gotta be in the same space. Like, we have to be in the same city. I think knowing you and like since like 9th grade, like being at your house multiple times, like knowing your moms, like and your pops, the relationship and the family dynamic. As much as I'm like, dang, like he wasn't there in specific aspects, your father specifically, like there is a semi grace that happens because he's physically there.
Yeah.
Where even though it's like it's difficult and what you went through is like painful, like this therapist now having this conversation with you like allows not an ease, but like a, hey, like there's a glimmer of hope, like this can still work out. And it takes you nothing to go to the crib and see him.
Sure.
Nothing for that like physical, like whatchamacallit, hey, pops, let's like do XYZ together, like
Now, are you saying you don't have that ability as well? I mean, forget about the physical aspect of it.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more for me to go there to see him. Like it's even more so. Like if he was in America, that'd be one thing. Like Florida, one thing. Let's say he was in like Orlando. All right, it's a 4-hour drive, 3-hour drive. Let's say he's in Philly. Like, hey, it's a flight. Now I need to go to like a whole nother country, which is still a flight, and it's
actually
probably closer than Philly.
I was thinking about I wasn't going to say it until you said that. Just
I know. But we're talking like, cause like there's more like barriers for entry.
1,000%.
Given the situation, which isn't an like I don't want it to seem like it's an excuse. But there's also like a like I honestly don't know him. Like I don't know this dude. I know of him. I knew what he was at when I was like 7 and while he was around. I could tell you like, yo, during that time, like I think that he was a great father. Like I think that he was a father that like loved his kids. or loves his kids. I believe that he still like loves us. Potentially, I don't know. But like during that stage, like dad that taught me how to ride a bike. I have like great, like I have fond memories of him. Dad that like they're running around the apartment like playing like Walker Texas Ranger dang there. Like
wow. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Like that type of vibe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like dad that like had me like jump on his back all the time. Like while he was laying on the bed and told me like walk on his back, and that was like fun as jacks. Like those are kind of like and that's at 7. Like I still remember like the bike situation. Like when I finally got trainer, was taking off my bike. Like dad that like had me go outside, and it was like cool. It was probably like might have been winter in Florida, which isn't like real winter, but
back then it was. But
yeah, back then it was like, or was it just like we were younger? So if it got
no, it's gotten hotter. It's gotten hotter for sure.
But it was like cold outside, and like him saying, "Yo, I'm right behind you," and holding like the back seat, and like him like pushing me while he's still holding it, and me like riding, and being like, "You still there?" And he's like, "Still there." And then like him letting go and being like me looking back and seeing like, "Yo, I've been riding," and seeing how far the distance is between he and I.
Do you realize that analogy is a direct reflection of your relationship with him?
Maybe, potentially.
No,
sure.
It's not no maybe. It's 100%.
Like him being there and then him letting go, and then like, I had to write about myself.
Yeah, like, and you looking back to see if he's still there. I feel like that's where you're at now. I feel like you're down that sidewalk at this point. I mean, you're okay mentally and emotionally, right? You're fine. But I feel like at this stage, you're looking back at how far, even in reflecting in this conversation, you're looking back at how far you've come from this alleged bike ride or whatever, right? And looking back to see if he's still there and holding on. Like, I don't know. I listen to you speak, right?
Yeah.
And I can sense that. I feel like you. I'm not a psychologist, bro.
Bro, just spit your. I'm
not trying to be that guy, right?
Nah, but go ahead.
The feeling I get is that it's twofold. One is that you're still that 7-year-old kid. Like you're still stuck in that place mentally sometimes. The way you spoke about him just now in that moment leading up to that, right? Like the whole bike thing, it felt very vivid. Like you painted the picture perfectly.
Yeah.
It's a memory that you hold near and dear to you, obviously, right? And I'm not saying you're stuck as like
near and dear, but I can vividly see. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say near and dear, bro. I'm gonna say near and dear. That's fine. Yeah, and I look at that and I'm thinking to myself like, yo, like I think you still have a deep, fond love for your father. And if it's not that, then it's...
I don't think I don't have a love. It's similar to like what your therapist said to you, right?
Yeah.
Like he's not that same person now.
Sure.
The version of your dad that you have beef with, or like that like was hurtful or harmful to you, isn't the same like father now, right?
Yeah.
There are aspects and things that led up to this, bro, like where it's like, okay, bet. Not that I don't think that he's the same person. Maybe he is, I don't know. Or maybe as you get older, you start to realize more things about like who specific people are. Sorry. But I think the picture of that version of a father is like what I want to be for my kid for the entirety of their life. And the things that made me realize that that's definitely not the case with my dad are the reasons why I'm okay. Like I feel like I'm all right with being like, hey, like I don't necessarily need to have a deep relationship with you.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really bother me that much. Like I'm okay without like us going past this point. Now, and me and you and I'm remembering me saying this again, and I came to the realization when we had this conversation. But me, you, and Stephanie were on the phone, like my sister were on the phone, and it was like a whole like thing. And I was like, bro, like I feel like people always like kind of really harbor on my father, but I'm like, yo, like I would have rather like a deeper thing with my mom's, and that's a whole nother conversation for the Damn Good Mom podcast. But
are you starting that?
We're not.
Man, that's necessary though.
Yeah, I'd love to have her on here though, so you could chop it over there. I think.
1,000%. Yeah, she's already on the list. I'm definitely speaking to your mom about this.
But all that to say this, like like there's a couple of even things in there with that, right? Like if I had that conversation with your therapist and it was just flipped from mom to dad to mom, like I'd probably be like, yeah, but why? Like, I don't know. It's not the why. I'm just looking at similarities, like things that are there. Like she was there.
Yeah.
Like she was like even without all the things, like the beefs that I have with her now, like even with like the stuff that like make me like put like specific boundaries to protect myself. Even with her specifically, and she's a great mom. Don't get me wrong. Like I believe that she like given the situation, bro. Like I don't even know if I would have been able to do the things that she did.
Yeah.
She was there. There's proximity. There's still like I could drive to her right now, like if I wanted to. If like revelation hits or enlightenment hits and it's like, oh dang, like yeah, like I need to redo this or da 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 or like it's there. Like that's not something that he necessarily has. Where I can take that like piece of or that nugget and be like, hey, this is an important aspect for a child and an adult. Like for me as like 34-year-old Matt to be like, yo, like there's less barriers to establish that. With where if you're not making it easy on yourself by leaving your kid.
For sure. I get it.
So yeah, bro. Like, I don't know if I'm still 7-year-old Matt, like wanting to establish a relationship with pops like that.
No, I don't think it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's you wanting to establish relationship with him specifically. I think that there are times or aspects or parts of you that's like, man, I wish I would have gotten still that, whatever that may be from pops, you know what I'm saying? From dad. And I don't think you allow it to affect you.
Yeah.
But I think subconsciously there are parts of you that's like, man, I really wish I like to this day, I still wish I would have had XYZ. It's just one of those things where I feel like it doesn't necessarily go away in terms of like the desire for that. Especially as bro, like this, and again, going back to the heart of this, right? Like as a young man, you desire your father's approval, you know, like for him to say, attaboy, good job, or I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Like that stuff, I don't know. I feel like it's ingrained in us. You know what I mean?
No, I feel you. And I'm thinking through what you're saying. I think that for me, it might technically be a little bit different than somebody else. And when you said that, I was like, okay, like I hear what he's saying. Do you feel like that's true for you zooming out? And I'm like, I don't know, like it doesn't like scratch the itch of truth. And then I had to ask myself, why isn't it not scratching the itch of truth? And while you're talking, I was thinking about it, like, why isn't that accurate? Like I would say that to somebody else, or to other people, but like, why is that not accurate? Why do you feel like it's not accurate for you? And I think that it wasn't accurate for me because, or it's not accurate so much for me because I didn't lose a father. Like I didn't lose a father. I felt like I gained a better one.
Almost like an upgrade to some degree.
By like the umpteenth power.
All right.
Like it didn't feel like that when my dad left, 7-year-old Matt would like, he lost a dad.
Sure.
Like he was waiting for years, like expecting him to come back. As Matt started to realize that like, hey, this isn't a thing. And as his mom really instilled into him, like, hey, like you have a dad, bro. Like, and she, when I say instill, like I'm talking about like regular basis, like almost like a mantra, like almost like a motivational like quote, like really made sure consistently as the sun rises that she's speaking this over me and Stephanie.
Yeah.
That like I started to believe that, and I did not lose. And I think when me and God got to a place where I felt like he abandoned me, then I lost. And that was hard.
Yeah.
For the 3 years that existed, like that was difficult. But then with the reconnection, like, and how he reconnected, and how crazy even that story in and of itself is. Like, it's like, yeah, nah, like that's my pops, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like he never left in the first place. So for me, it's like, nah, man, I'm straight. Like, I'm good. I'm Gucci.
All
Like,
right, let me challenge you again.
Yeah.
Let me challenge
I'm
you
about
again.
it. I'm about it. I'm for it. Talk to me.
I mean, if you want to go scripture and biblical and all that
sure,
stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting just now. Like I just had this thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
Prodigal son.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Homie leaves, runs off into the world and does his thing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Leaves. His dad is like distraught because like, my son is out there. Don't know where he's at. He's living amongst pigs, like all that stuff, right? Cool.
Sure.
He comes back home, and what does the father do?
Throws a robe.
And greets him. He greets him
gives
as
him
I'm
the
like,
ring,
yo, this is my son.
Kill the fatted calf.
All that stuff. Celebration. Let's throw a party.
Gone.
Let's throw a party.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate, right?
Yeah.
Why is it that when the father comes back home after leaving, he doesn't get that same greeting?
Who? Like which father? Like in in the aspect of our
Well, I'm not talking Heavenly Father. That's not fair. That's not a fair comparison. I'm talking about your physical biological father. If he comes home and it's like, hey, I know I left, went to go get that milk and never came back, and whatever. But now he's in a place of like, I mean, I don't know where he's at now, mentally or emotionally. If he's like sympathetic or empathetic about the situation, and is like, hey, let me fix things now. I don't know.
Yeah.
But my thought is that, like, in your opinion, or no, in my opinion, he has taken a step.
Sure.
To say, hey, look.
Nah. So within my context specifically, he was the son that left, and I was the dad that went to go say, hey, I forgive you. Versus the son that left came to his senses and came back and said, hey, can you forgive me?
You went and got him.
I went to him.
Yeah. All right.
Like I had to put on bigger man shoes, like pick up the phone and be like, hey, bro, like let's chop it up about this.
Yeah.
So we can navigate this conversation. Versus him being like, look, like,
my bad. I messed
up. This is like what the situation is. And being like similar to like Pat, where it's like, dang, bro, like you make it like, you initiate, and Pat, he initiated contact, but it was like, yo, like there's certain things that you need to do if you want this relationship to be a thing, like where it's on you to like do that. But like for me, it was like, all right, we putting on big boy pants and we got to go over there.
Okay.
And that's a whole different like scenario. When Heavenly Father, like when it came back to Heavenly Father, I was like, oh snap, like that was 1,000% life changing. But with my specific father, like he almost in a sense, I mean, and I don't know if it's like prodigal son, like because I think a prodigal son was a little like he was selfish, but in my story, he would have been the one that left. And me being the dad went to go get him.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. You make me want to now go back and revisit the Patrick episode.
Why?
Same thing. Same question. Like he put a foot forward. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I look at the story of the prodigal son. He wasn't a perfect son by any means.
Right.
He came back. He came to his senses.
He basically asked, like, so him in biblical context, scholars say, I don't know, I didn't live in those times, but him asking for his inheritance was almost like him telling that his dad that he wished he was dead, like that his father would have died.
Okay.
Like it was bad. So he was like up and left, like for sure. So in thinking of him, like he was not a good son at all. Just to
right.
That. Yeah.
So now in my mind, I'm like, yo, he comes back and he's just on some like, hey, I messed up, or I recognize where I was wrong. And the father, being the father that he is, the damn good dad that he was, robed him. Hey, come on in. My son is home. Like we got to throw a party, a feast in his honor because he's home. I don't care where he's been. I don't care the details of what happened.
Yeah.
He's home.
Yeah.
And and it's, bro, I'm not, you know me. I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate right now.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm about it. I love it.
Yeah. So I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, damn, like, why do we not have the same reception? And I'm speaking to me as well. I'm like, I'm not gonna be a hypocrite about this. I'm definitely speaking to me as well. Like when the father comes in and he's the one who made the mistake and he's trying to rectify it, it may not look like how we want it to look, but do we not throw a party in his honor as well? Do we not robe him? Do we not run out and embrace him now that he's back, so to speak?
Mm-hmm.
And I know. Look.
It's an interesting aspect. Yeah, not for sure.
Yeah. And hold on. And one more thing, just for context, right? Going back to a therapy session, man, I feel like I'm learning so much in there. One of the very first therapy session I had with this therapist, we were talking about self-worth and value, and especially as a man, like those are things that are like taboo. We don't talk about those things. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, we're talking about self-worth and value and all that good stuff. And he's asking me if I like really believe in my self-worth and that type of thing. Fully transparent, fully vulnerable. I was like, no, not really. Like I put everybody before me. Like I'm not that important. Like everyone else in my life is more important to me than me. And he was like, all right, cool. What about your son? I was like, what about him? My firstborn, Amari. He was like, do you think that he has value? And I was like, absolutely. And he was like, all right, cool. And this is where he messed me up. He was like, what did he do to earn that
Nothing.
value?
Yeah.
And I was like,
it's just your son.
Nothing. He's like, he's my son. Like, what do you mean?
He's
like, that's my point. You don't have to do anything. You just simply breathing means that you have value.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought about that. And I was like, there's nothing. And I'm speaking this now, right? There's nothing in this world, nothing that could ever happen that'll make me look at my children, my kids, my boys differently.
Yeah.
I don't care. Even if you go against every single thing that I've taught you or I've raised you to be or not be, whatever, they will never lose their value in my eyes. They will never lose their position. You will always be my son.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm like, I need that same energy back. I will always be your dad. Like, I don't know. Like it's weird because it's like part of it's like, well, did you earn that? Did you, you know what I'm saying? Like to be called that. And it's different because as a dad, right? It's different.
Yeah.
You have responsibilities as a dad.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, did you earn that right to say that?
Yeah.
As a son, no, he didn't have to do anything. He automatically gets this level of grace almost because he's a child and he's not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But as a dad, it's like, you almost have to earn it. And I'm like, no, I will always be your father. The same way you will always be my son.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. That's interesting. That's definitely an interesting perspective.
Thank you. Excuse me. Let's cut that off the tape.
Yeah. I don't know. Like the prodigal son story ends at the feast and ends at the older brother, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'd venture to say maybe the prodigal son like stayed at the house. He probably stayed at the house because after he came to his senses and realized, well, but then there's also this, right? So going to your analogy.
Mm-hmm.
With the prodigal son, he came to his senses. He was in pig's flop and was like, yo, what am I doing here? My father's servants literally live better than this.
Yeah.
Let me go back to my dad and beg him, plead to him to like just make me a hired servant.
Yeah.
Like I messed up. I'm not expecting him to it's heart posture.
For sure.
I think that's what it boils down to is heart posture. Like I'm not expecting him to even put me back like as son or accept me even as son because literally I said, screw you, dad. Like give me my inheritance. I like wish you were dead. Like I don't want to be here anymore. Like let me do my own thing. I hate you. I leave. I do my stuff. I'm like, dang, I came to my senses. I messed up. I messed this whole thing up. Like my heart posture isn't reinstate me as son. My heart posture is, bro, like make me a servant. Like, I'll work for you. I'm sorry. I messed this thing up. I know I deserve absolutely like nothing.
Yeah.
Even servanthood. Like, I'm going to beg for that. Like, there's a difference in heart posture where it's like, hey, like, when I've noticed that I've done wrong, there is a like, yo, I know I don't deserve any of this versus like, hey, no, I've done wrong and I still deserve this.
Yeah. You're right.
Like, what does that look like? Like, oh, Pops did dirty. I'm going to reinstate and I still need to be Pops. Like, I still want immediate whatchamacallit. Granted, the father's response before he could even finish his sentence was like, yo, go kill the fatted calf.
Yeah.
Like,
to your point, like, right, what I hear in all of that, like what's not being said it didn't matter what the son's heart posture
Right.
was for the father.
Right.
In his eyes, it didn't matter what the posture was.
Right. 1,000%.
Yeah.
For the father.
For the father.
Right.
But to your point.
But for the son, I think that heart posture means a lot.
It means everything.
Right.
Because his intent on coming back and what it was, right? And again, I'm speaking on his behalf, obviously, right? Like, I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm putting myself in his position, and my thought process is, if I'm coming back like a dog with my tail between my legs, realizing I messed up and, like, you know, I had it good here, or whatever the case may be. I had a father who truly loved me. I'm coming back in the sense of, like, yo, yeah, I'm very lowly. Like, I just want to be in your presence. Like, Dad, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I messed up bad. I don't need anything from you. I just want to be here and not out there. Like, I just want to be here with you, Dad. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, the heart posture is that.
Yeah.
And to further your point, I do think that, like, in your scenario, right? Let's be specific about this. In your scenario, yeah, your dad would have to come back and say, look, well, you know, I messed up.
Sure. Yeah. And not even, because right now, even in that, I'm also thinking about, because I know a little bit of past story. I didn't finish the pod because it's like right now we're in the stage where we're like,
it's all good, bro. It's all good.
So, and now I'm going to 1,000%. Like, because you were like, hey, like, I almost want to ask Pat that question, because technically in the flip side where I went to my father, his father came to him back.
Right.
Yeah, but it didn't seem like it was like a make me a hired servant.
I mean, from what he explained, no, I don't think so either. I think, and this is just my my heart's posture.
And not to speak on, like,
no, he's gonna have to speak for himself on that whole subject matter, both of them, right? But I think from my heart's posture, I am a little bit more lenient when it comes to people and that compassion for them. And I understand this is a sore spot. We're talking about our dad who's left us with hurt. I get that.
Yeah.
In my mind, though, right? Like, again, not being in the situation, so it's different for me. But I immediately think to myself, he didn't have to do that.
Who, the dad?
The dad. It's been 30 plus years.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to change.
Yeah.
But, like,
I mean, and the prodigal son didn't have to go back home.
I mean, yeah, no.
He didn't have to.
His hand was kind of forced a little bit.
How?
He was broke. He was on the streets. He had nothing.
Yeah.
He went back home.
Facts.
So,
like, and he was broke. He was on the streets. Like, he was in the pig slop. And his intent was, like, it could have even been on some, like, yo, like, I'll go back because I don't, for my own benefit.
Sure. Can't say no to that.
Right?
Yes. But yeah. But there was a need, though.
There was a need. And in the need, it was like, yo, like, I'd even be willing to, like, low myself all the way down to where, like, in a situation where a pops is calling, like, a son after not ever, like, having any type of contact with that person, like I think the two heart postures are just different.
For sure.
Like, and I'm like, I can't, like, I can feel him on it. Like, I can feel him on it 1,000%, and I can't fault him. Like, not like, because he's like, it's not like Pat like had, and we don't need to put this in this stuff, but it's not like he had anything, like he did anything drastic or wrong, or like was like, yo, get out of my face, or none of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Like, it wasn't even that. He was like, I think that if I mean, maybe potentially, like, because he's not, the prodigal son is a picture of, like, God in us, the good father in us. Your flip side of it is, like, of, like, a son and a father. Which I like to, like, we can tote that, like, storyline. Like, we can mess around with that, and that's interesting. I almost, like, agree with Pat where it's like, hey, like, why is it just one phone call? Like, if your heart, like, if you really wanted to reestablish a relationship, then it wouldn't have been that.
Agreed. I agree.
And I know Pat's wasn't like, yo, grab the robe, kill the fatted calf. Like, let's throw a party. Like, my dad's back.
Yeah.
But also the son in the prodigal son was back.
Like, officially back.
Period.
Yeah.
As servant or son.
He just wanted to be a part of dad's life. He was just there.
He was there.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Be it like, hey, like, for money or to be like he was back.
Yeah.
Like it was solidified. Like, hey, I'm
no
here.
argument there.
Yeah. Like, so imagine the prodigal son dad killing the fatted calf, throwing the robe on. But he's not back. Like, I don't know if dad, like, seeing, like, because the dad's thing was like, hey, my son was once lost and now he's found. Like, that was like his vibe. Like, yo, like he was dead and now he's alive. Like, yo, he's back.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Like, if he wasn't back, then it's like, yo, you kind of still dead. Like,
not the still dead.
Like, you're still lost.
Yeah.
You playing Monopoly, just passing through.
Literally, it's
like,
a temporary thing.
That's not real.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. You know, we have to toss a little wrench in there. Just
I'm about it, bro. You know me, dog. I'm about this thing, bro. I'm about this thing.
Man.
I'm sorry, that thing.
Yeah. No, dude. Look, man.
It's good.
This is definitely a good one, man, for sure. They're all good ones, man. Like so I think I'm gonna start doing this thing with your episode now, because it hit me earlier, and I didn't want to interrupt you, so I left it. I let it go. But I think I'm gonna start doing this thing, like at the end of each episode, just talking about the one takeaway that I got today. And here's why. Every episode I've shot thus far, I've walked away thinking to myself, how can I implement something that I heard today at home? And like clockwork, it happened again with this one. But it didn't come from where you would think it came from. You know what the takeaway I got from today's conversation? What? Your mom. You were talking about how your mom instilled in you and your sister so heavily that you have a heavenly father still. You forget about heavenly, because in my mind, it's not even heavenly. Like, she's looking at this as a real biological father who was there for you.
Greatest gift she should ever get.
She instilled that into you as a kid, right? And I thought to myself, what am I instilling in my kids? Here you are at 34 years old. This happened to you 20 plus years ago, almost 30 years ago, and you still remember it to this day.
Oh, yeah.
What are we instilling in our kids? Like, what are we showing them and teaching them, right? Dude. That's going to prepare them for a time such as this. Like, I pray and hope that, like, no one ever has to go through, and I mean, it's reality, but whatever. I don't want people to have to go through what you went through or what I went through with my dad or whatever the case may be. In a perfect world, I'd love for, great relationships all across the board. No child is left parentless or fatherless specifically, right? But in my mind, I'm like, all right, well, that's not reality. What are we leaving our kids? Because your dad left you in this place, whatever, and your mom picked up the slack and made up the gap with her parenting style. And look how it's affected you in a positive way 30 plus years later. Like, you now have a relationship with your heavenly father because of your mom. I feel like that's where it started.
Yeah,
she set the foundation.
A fact, big facts.
But more importantly, she left you with something that, like, you can stand on for the rest of your life. Like, she taught you that. So I'm like, yo, what are we instilling in our kids?
Yeah.
And, that's really big, obviously, for any parent, but, like, especially for, like, you or I, where we, like, I have young kids, you're about to have a kid. Like, it starts at home the first day, from day one. What are we teaching our kids?
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest takeaway I got from today. Like, I thought about, like, and obviously it's I saw the converse of that as well within your story. What did your dad leave you with when he left your life? And, whatever, he left you to deal with XYZ.
Yeah.
And here's your mom. She's left you with XYZ, these tools to help you with whatever. So, like, I think that was the biggest takeaway I got from today, man. Like, I know it was all about, I know the title and everything we kind of talked about was more surrounded, like, forgiveness and, like, how do we move forward given the hurt and all that good stuff. But man, like, that left a really big impact on me. The moment you said that, you said it 2 or 3 times. By the time you got to the second time, I was sitting there thinking to myself, man, like, that there's something there. What are we leaving our kids?
Yeah.
So
that's good.
I definitely implore you to think about that, man, as this baby's on the way.
Sure.
Got a couple more months to go.
Yeah.
I am excited for you, man. We got a couple more months, whatever it is. Like, what is she at now? Like 5?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
All right. Either way.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of months.